Hello again, everybody. It's been a little while since my last video. Been dealing with work and COVID, but this video I'm gonna talk about something a little bit different. I'm gonna talk about a campaign that I'm DMing at the moment. I'm running a Homebrew world, 25 point buy. I'm using Elephant in the Room feat tax removal, and I'm also running a staggered gestault. Now, for those of you that don't know what this means, homebrew means it's not Paizo sanctioned. I made some adjustments myself. It's my own world. It's not set in Glorian. I do keep a lot of the lore the same, of course, just to ease in, make it simpler for those who already know the races and everything else. As for the point buy, 25 is up there. It's the highest. Technically, you can go higher, of course, homebrew, but 25 is a very high point buy, 15 being standard. And then the staggered gestalt that I've been talking about. Well, what gestalt is you take two classes, let's say a fighter and a wizard. At level 1, you'd have the fighter's martial, like all their weapon proficiencies, armor proficiencies. You'd get the bonus feat. You'd get their fort save, full BAB. While on the wizard side, you'd get the wizard's spells, the wizard's bonded item or familiar, along with the wizard's will save. You take the fighter's hit dice, D10, instead of the wizard's D6? Might be a D8. Anyway, the point is, you take the best of both classes and you mesh them together. If something has something unique, you grab it. Now I'm doing this gestalt at levels 1, and then after every ability enhancement. So at level 4 you'd get an ability point, so level 5 you'd get a new gestalt. The reason why I did it this way is it's less powerful than standard gestalt. Standard gestalt can get out of hand very easily, but my game already has that capability since 25 point buy already makes people heroes, you know. But the whole reasoning behind all this was me and my friends, we're all busy with life, we have jobs. Sometimes people have to cancel on making it to a session, and a lot of my sessions have been 2 players. Some of them, maybe one person shows up or wants to play, you know. But basically, all the characters in my world are very high powered. This allows me to not pull the punches as much. But the whole premise of my campaign, basically I set up a giant tower that opens up I think I had it set up every 50 years. The tower opens. Now, everyone floods the tower because the lore is if you make it to the top floor, you get whatever wish you want granted. No one knows what's happened. The tower always closes after so long, and it's assumed someone got their wish, but no one ever knows how or why. And as for the person that cleared it, no one knows who they are. But everyone wants to claim the tower. However, it's dangerous. Very few people make it past the 3rd floor. Now, another homebrew part of my world is magic items. They're very rare. Now I introduced something called flawed items. Basically, I take a magic item and I essentially nerf it. Like cloak resistance +1 might give +1 reflex, +1 will save, nothing to fort. As for other items, I took a very similar approach as well, where I look at them and maybe something will give a static bonus. Maybe I'll make it so you have to activate as a swift action and only lasts for X amount of rounds. by doing this, I can kind of reward the players without watching them get out of hand, because a lot of times I see if the right player gets magic items in their hand, they turn to an absolute beast. Now I tweak my encounters to try to give challenge to the players without pushing, like, to make them unfair, you know? Like, if a wizard's destroying everything, I'm not gonna make a single enemy that's gonna absolutely wreck the wizard's day. You know, it might pop up every now and then, but I'm not gonna throw it at them every encounter to tune them down. But anyway, I set up a big city outside of this tower. I put in a bunch of little side quests because originally in my campaign I had planned for the players to enter the tower around level 4. But I'm doing individual XP because, like I said, some people can't make it every session. Sometimes I'll be able to plan a one-off. But my original idea was every time they start a quest, they'll end the quest that session, and they'll go on to doing their daily lives. And as a catch-up mechanic, I had things where, so I'm keeping track of time in my campaign. Like, as days go by, I keep track of it. I made a starting day just to ease people in, and I keep recording what happens on those days with those players. Now, if a player misses multiple sessions, which happened, some of my players got up to level 5, and some of them had maybe weren't even level 2 yet. So, to make a catch-up mechanic, if they missed too many sessions, I had different things in the city that were going on to passively earn XP, passively earn income, etc., that they could do via text more of instead of having to actually show up and play. Now, the rewards weren't as high, but it was something that was consistent, and it gave them unique rewards. Like, for instance, in one of the books for expanded downtime rules, you can visit martial academies. Now, if you train a week at a martial academy, because when you level up, you roll your hit die and you see how much health you get. So let's say you roll d10 and you get an 8. Well, if you spend a week training at the martial academy, you get to add 1 to that. So now it's 9. You spend another week, now it's maxed out at 10. But let's say you roll poorly, you roll a 3. Now, you don't have much hit points gained from that level, so the more time you spent at that academy, the more you can boost it up. Meanwhile, the other players are earning XP, but every now and then, I'll look and see what's going on in the entire city as a whole, keep track of what everyone's been doing, and see what happens around them. Because I have a step where almost every action has a consequence of some sort, whether it's positive or it's negative. For instance, you take out a bandit camp. I have most of the bandits set up where there's different bandit tribes or organizations, and taking out someone you might be taking care of one person's competitor. Maybe they'll move in more now, or maybe they'll come after you for revenge, etc. So, the entire world's alive and moving at the same time. And maybe one player's actions will come back on another player. Now, I'm not doing this to be facetious, I'm not doing it to be mean. Basically, it's setting up a bunch of different aspects that you can dive into in this world. Like, for instance, my players took out basically a gambling ring. A bunch of illegal betting. They were buying magical animals to find them. And basically the rich nobles of the town were partaking in this, and one of the bandit tribes was sending all this up. They put a stop to that little area. The nobles were arrested for it. I never did figure out what they'd be tried with, but that might be something to look into for the future. It wasn't something the players were actively tracking anyway. They just did a good deed. Finished a quest. Animals were going missing in town. They were being used as bait animals, etc. But later on, bandits had tracked down where these individuals lived, and um, one of my players, their backstory, they started off on the outskirts of town. They had lived there their entire life, while some other players had moved to the town, and they were all renting a barn, essentially, due to the prices in the city, and there is some racism in the city, like most of the Pathfinder world, for 1E mostly. But people who take exotic races or even custom races are going to be looked at differently. They have less representation, and that's one big thing about my city. Um, Most of the races have a representation there. I did some rules. I figured out what races were predominant. I made the core races predominant just because they're the core. The halflings and gnomes, there's fewer of them, so they're represented together. But anyway, I would set up, if there's so many of a race in the city, they get to elect an official to represent them. Now, all these elected officials meet up and delegate things every month to make sure fair treatment's going on, if anything needs to be changed, accommodated for, etc. As far as culture and laws go. But anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. But anyway, I had all this passive things that people could do to get XP. Some of the NPCs they met along the way. I eventually had a quest to draw all the people in, where some of these one-offs where maybe I had a one-on-one session, and they met an NPC, they helped them, they learned more about them. Some of these NPCs went missing. And one of my players had a run-in with a tiefling early on, level 1. And they got bad vibes from them. The tiefling gave him a quest, very odd request to find a missing cat. And afterwards, he just vanished. He got the cat, he paid a couple silver, and no one heard from him. Well, other players eventually got a request to find a little girl's cat. She was running on the outskirts of town near the woods, and they went up and started helping her because she was lost, looking for her cat. And eventually the cat was found, and to throw a curveball, I made a homebrew curse. Basically made the cat into a cursed item, where whoever held the cat was hit with kind of like a charm spell, where they wanted this cat. Just holding the cat made them want it, and it started making them paranoid that other people were going to take the cat away. They first ran into a halfling NPC who had found the cat, and he eventually started getting paranoid. He basically found a little burrow and was hiding there with the cat. Through use of scent and everything else, they eventually were able to find him and subdue him without killing him. But that started a long chain of quests I eventually started throwing their way. A lot of other things were going on. Like I said, it's an active city. There's bandits. There was gnolls in the outskirts. Further up the... by the way, I had a step. There's a big peninsula. This is where everything was taking place. But there's the mainland up north of it. Barbarian tribes. Across the ocean, there was different nations. Basically, this was a human nation, the outskirts of it, and further in was the elven nation. Humans had the peninsula, the elves had the mainland. Humans also had more mainland elsewhere, but there's a lot of lore to go into for that. But eventually, my players finally getting caught up in levels, and there's a slight level discrepancy. I got a couple level 6 players, almost level 7. I got some level 5 players. Some of my players have lost their character sheets over the time, and So I've kind of had to help them rebuild it, because one also addition that I added was everyone had a special ability that they start off with level 1 and then progresses at every ability gain. Something small like one of my halflings, they have plus 10 to their movement speed. Now, that's fairly big. So what I'm doing is I'm lessening the ones that come up after. Other people, like, one's playing Goron, if I'm pronouncing it right, in the expanded wilderness, or the wilderness book. I can't remember what it's called, but I gave him ability to gain DR3 three times a day, but only lasts for one round. It's immediate action. But going up a little bit further, they eventually get enough levels and they enter the tower. Well, the special thing about the tower is it's not just a tower. It's essentially a giant demiplane. The first floor that they ended up on, so I have a setup where most people end up in a labyrinth type dungeon where they just fight monsters and progress that way. But the PCs, being somewhat chosen to enter this tower, have been teleported to basically a small region where there's human villages and they're under attack from various warring goblins. Like, they had found out that the goblins have all banded together, essentially to avenge some fallen chiefs. With their leadership dwindling and the goblins being attacked, they made one giant goblin tribe. Now, I realize that this isn't 100% lore friendly. Goblins are very mischievous, but I made them more brutal, less happy-go-lucky, but essentially it's mostly like farm folk. Some very few warriors trained, they gave some of them some class levels just to make the humans stand a chance, but a lot of stuff's going on. There's espionage. The Lord of the land is taking this opportunity to thin out some of the problematic people who have been there, like the mayor, some of the other village elders and stuff. He's trying to move in and do that. The church there has a false priest rogue who had infiltrated, and he was slowly gaining control by spreading the religion and trying to take over the people that way and keeping their money for taxes and everything else. Basically trying to make the Lord more wealthy and eventually develop the area more. Basically, where the goblins took over, there's another place where there's a fort that the Lord had set up, and the person in charge was aristocrat, not like a general or anything, because the area was peaceful. There was never really need for like setting armies, so you had a few bodyguards here and there. A small peacekeeping force, which was mostly like level 1 to maybe level 2 humans. But essentially, the players are trying to solve what's going on and to finish the floor, because it's not just kill everything and leave. There's actually a puzzle going on. One thing that my players have already identified is that this is in the past. There was a hero in the past named Tychus Severium. He basically had a vision from the gods that a terrible catastrophe was going to happen, and he basically spent years and years and years rallying together people to fight for this. But as you know, people who have visions are often met with distrust, named Doomsayers, etc. It took him a long time to finally gather support, but the tower is basically following some of the key points through his life. This one being one of his earlier ones. And anyway, as the story goes, he eventually amassed basically an army of people. Basically, I don't want to call it a cult, but basically a cult. They didn't revere him as a god or anything, but they thought of him as an apostle for the gods. Not just one specific god, but all the core deities. Basically, this ends up with the Tarask and a lot of lost lives and divine spark, and that's why the tower exists. But I have a pretty small group of players, like I said before. I have one using classes from the Book of Many Things. He's eventually going to be switching characters once we get later in the game, as his class is kind of spiraling out of control due to bad wording on abilities, and instead of crippling him, I'm just letting it roll for now. See, his character already has a core weakness I can exploit if I ever really needed to. I also have a rogue who's taken Gestalt into Mesmerist. I have a monk who's taken a Gestalt into Druid, I believe. Or no, War Priest. He's War Priest monk. Then I have a Gunslinger rogue. I have a Elemental Annihilator and a fighter. Then two of my other players haven't played in a while. More than likely will end up changing classes. They've only played one session. But it was originally a Gloomblade fighter mixed with a Barbarian and a Oracle mixed with a Sorcerer, I believe. Anyway, that's just like kind of a rough outline of how my campaign is and some of the things I've been doing in it. I know some of my lackings is storytelling, so I've been throwing pretty heavy combat lately. But for the majority of it, it has been a lot of RP. But so I've been trying to throw a big RP element into a combat element and keep that going. But this campaign's been going on for about almost 2 years now. But like I said, sometimes we meet once a month. Sometimes was a gap time where we didn't meet for almost half a year. And like, I would love to meet a lot more. I'd love to play in a campaign as well, but time doesn't allow that when you're dealing with family and friends and work. But I guess that's kind of like my Pathfinder story of all this. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to add for this video. I think I'll end this video here, but I would like to thank you all for listening. I know that I can be monotone at times, and I stutter sometimes, have little pauses. I do all my videos on the fly. I don't really do any preparation. I just get an idea, like maybe I should talk about my campaign, or maybe like my beginner one was like talking about the character sheet, talking about different classes. I didn't get very far in that. I kind of started losing steam because a lot of this people can just look up. I was just given enough information to help some people understand it, because some people can explain things a lot better than I can, but then there's some people who understand things in a different way. But if there's any improvements that you guys like to see me make from my videos, I know I don't got a lot of viewers, but for the ones that do, any things I should do differently, positive criticism, negative criticism, basically give me whatever you guys feel. And I'll be trying to make more videos in the future here. Most of them are going to be more Pathfinder talks. Maybe I'll talk about different things I've done in campaigns. Maybe shine some light on some of my builds I've done. Either way, it should be informative, help people understand the game better. Because, like I said, Pathfinder and tabletop RPGs, anyone can play them, but not everyone's going to enjoy them the same way other people will. Everyone's looking for something different, entertainment, the whole imagination, and role play. Some people don't really like that. Other people want the feeling of RPG that you'd play on a PlayStation or a computer, where tabletops are quite a bit different. But anyway, like and subscribe if you like my video. Comment, leave me wherever you feel. And that will be all. Thank you for listening.